think I first met you. I was at a London Broncos game quite a few years ago. You were sitting just in front of the press box, and you said, "That's my son playing." And I drive here every home game from Wales to watch him play. That's Elliot Kear, of course. How do we tell us about your journey from, I guess, being a proud dad and supporting your son to now being the CEO of Wales Rugby League?
Enjoying rugby league more than I was rugby union, and started to help out a little bit because of my background with some of the corporate stuff in terms of brokering some deals for sponsorship around the World Cup in 2013. And then I was asked if I'd get involved with the board, and I wasn't sure if I was a conflict of interest or not. Spoke to John Kear, head coach, and he said, no, of course it's not. And so I started to get involved more involved at the beginning part of last year. And then we lost the CEO and the general manager in a short space of time. And I was between contracts, and so I was able to step in at short notice. And, it perhaps doesn't pay me the type of money that I would normally get in other jobs, but, it's a vocation really. So I said I would do it for a short period of time, and then I ended up applying for the job and going through the interview process with Sport Wales and getting it. And so here I am, sort of 18 months on.
And what did you find your biggest sort of challenges were when you took up the job, Gareth? Were they the things you thought they'd be, or were there a few surprises in there?
It's a good question. I think, I've always been on the outside kind of looking in, and if I'm honest, I think there were things that I saw that were going on with our national governing body. I've been around it for 10 or 11 years now, watching Elliot play international rugby league, and there were things that I thought perhaps weren't right. We have a very strong chairman in Brian Juliff, obviously who's a legend in Halifax and Wigan, and I knew that he'd been doing a lot to try and change things. So when I came into it, a year ago, last March, there was a lot to be done, a hell of a lot to be done, to be honest with you. I mean, when I came into it, we had problems with our funding with Sport Wales that had been withheld. We didn't have a kit contract. We only had 4 match officials in Wales, and the thing was actually needed not a lot of work. And the analogy I always use is like inheriting a house from an old relative that's been lived in for a number of years, and you get there and you think, well, this needs a bit of decorating, so you take a bit of wallpaper off, and all of a sudden you find a bit of dry rot and a bit of wet rot. That leads to something else. But fundamentally, the house has got great foundations, and that is certainly the case for Wales Rugby League. So, no, it was a bit of a baptism of fire at the start, to be honest.
And I guess one of the key issues that, the home nations have to deal with, and I guess plenty of nations around the world outside of the top 3, is availability of players for internationals, and getting them released from your clubs, and also that sort of balance between heritage players and guys who currently live there, or currently play in Wales, and guys, I guess, in your case, guys who actually, they're not grandparents, actually from Wales, have got an accent. Was that something that you already went into the job with a strong view on how that should work, or have you developed your view on the job of those issues?
No, I had a very strong view about that. I'm a proud Welshman, and I'm born and bred in Cardiff, and so are both my sons. And I think that we look upon our nationality as we're very proud of it, and I think that, and that's the same for Lloyd White and Gil Dudson and Regan Grace and Ben Flower and Rhys Williams and Rodri. All those boys are proud Welshmen. So I think that that's why we're trying to grow the game. But of course, when you grow in the game, there are people that are heritage players because their parents or grandparents were born in Wales, and we've got some great heritage players as well. In terms of Josh Ralph, and we've had Tyson Frizzell in the past, and there's a couple that we're looking at the moment. But you're right, the balance has got to be right. We're proud of the fact that 70% of our players who are in our international squads, and certainly on our game day 17s, are born and bred in Wales, and that's really important to us. But we don't want to disadvantage anybody just because their parents decided to move or grandparents decided to move. And actually, when Josh Ralph played for us, I met his grandfather and his father, and his grandfather was from my stag, and they're proud of their Welsh heritage, and that's really important to us. We don't want people to play for Wales just because they had some daffodils at the bottom. We want people to play for Wales because they identify with who we are.
Yeah. So are you disappointed that the World Cup next year is entirely in England? Did you hope at one point that there might be some games in Wales?
Yeah, well, obviously, the 2013 World Cup was England and Wales, and I think that was an opportunity missed. I think for Wales Rugby League, that could have been a brilliant springboard for us, but we failed to perform as well as we should have on the field. I mean, don't get me wrong, Italy were a strong side, Cook Islands were a strong side, So we had some difficult games, and USA as well, but. Not really. I think what I would say is John Dutton and his team have done an absolutely tremendous job in establishing the World Cup and the way that they're promoting it and the way that they're building it. I think it's absolutely brilliant. I think it's going to be the best sporting event for a long time anywhere in the world. So we're really looking forward to it.
Yeah. And so next year, the squad that played in the in the qualifiers, that will be pretty much the squad you take into the World Cup, or have you been approached by some heritage players that maybe we haven't associated with the team until now?
John Kear is a tremendous coach, and the one thing he's built for us is a culture. And yes, so the bulk of our team is going to be the players that we work with and who are loyal to Wales Rugby League and us as a nation. And we're actually, in terms of our cycle of building a team, we've got a really excellent mix. We've got people like Elliot and Reece Williams and Rodri who've been around, around the World Cup. This will hopefully be their third World Cup, so they've been around it for a long time. And then we've got an excellent blend of younger players coming through, so that the mix is really good for us. And of course, there's a couple of heritage players. We already have Josh Ralph. And there's one or two other heritage players that we're looking at to bolster that side. But, in the cycle of where we are building towards the World Cup, I know John and his staff are very confident in what we got. And I'm looking in, as a governing body, we're really happy where we are.
Yeah, I remember when you qualified for the World Cup, it was my job to hand out that flag that said we're all going to England for the photos. And the boys were saying, we're all going to England we're all going to England in about half an hour, actually. So I wondered if you could tell me a little bit about some of the recent activity, the sort of that's happened where Welsh Rugby League has been in the news a little bit. The Ronda Outlaws taking part in the Euro 13s. Where do you sit on all that? I saw you were a little bit sceptical initially about the Euro 13s. But you're retweeting their stuff now and they're retweeting your stuff. So where does all that kind of sit at the moment, Gareth?
Well, just to start, let's be clear, the one thing that we're all about is developing rugby league. Let's be unequivocal about that. We want to develop the sport, and I think the idea of a club competition in Europe is a great notion and a great idea. But obviously we're a governing body, and we work closely with the RFL, and we work closely with the RLEF and the International Rugby League. So when the Euro 13 came along, we didn't know much about it, and to be honest, we still don't know a lot about it. So from a governing body point of view, we're neutral as far as that competition is concerned. But I remembering back, even though I'm old, I can still remember what it's like to play rugby, and I can imagine that for teams who want to play and have an opportunity to play abroad and perhaps play in Spain, that's quite exciting and very attractive. So our teams are acting as free agents, and we have a watching brief to see how it goes. And I think that if it works well, then brilliant. I mean, it's brilliant for the sport and brilliant for everybody.
And there's also been at least one new club launched in the last week or so. Is that right? Is it Aberavon Fighting Irish? Is that what they're called?
Yeah. So Aberavon Fighting Irish, actually they were involved a number of years ago, and they had a real strong tradition then. And things in Wales are really vibrant at the moment. I think that this year before COVID came along, we were launching a 4 club women's competition to complement the men's competition. So those games are going to be played, men and women's, on a double header to make it a family day on Saturdays, and then our junior games on a Sunday. Aber Valley Wolves are a side that come through as a junior side, and they're looking to run men and women's at open age. So actually next year we should have at least 2 Aber Valley Wolves who already have a junior section, but we'll have a open age section, men and women, and Aberavon. And they've got a great pedigree down there. Sort of Chris Callahan and his brothers, they know the game inside out, and I've had quite a few conversations with them. They're really supportive of what we're trying to do. They believe in the values of being inclusive and diversity and equality. So as opposed to just running a men's open age side, they're committed to running women's as well, and a junior section. And we're working very hard to get wheelchair teams attached to all of our community clubs. So, yeah, great to see Aberavon fighting Irish, and they're really busy on social media, which is really good to see, and really keen to see those games for next year.
Well, when will Rugby League in Wales resume, Gareth? What's the situation with regard to lockdown and COVID-19 and all that?
Well, it's a good question. I sit on a working party with Welsh ministers, the Welsh Government, and my colleagues at the Welsh Rugby Union and the Football Association of Wales and the Wales Cricket Board. So, I'm working on that working party to get professional sport back and elite sport back, and then we're looking at community sport. And the situation is rapidly changing. You only have to look at Spain, I think, and Italy and Serbia and France, how quickly the virus is dying away and how people are getting back to normality. So I think we're looking at sometime in September for our community game. Obviously, Super League starts back up on the first weekend of August, which is brilliant for all of us. And I think there's still a question to be taken by the RFL in terms of Championship and League One.
Right. Can you tell the viewers and listeners a little bit about the challenges you face, I guess, financially? I mean, I've done some stories with Brian Jouliffe in the past where he's outlined how small the funding is from the RFL and all that sort of stuff. Where are the opportunities, Gareth, to make up the difference and to generate some more revenue? How tough is it, and where are you looking to try to sort of bring in more money?
So I think probably in the past, Wales Rugby League have been very focused on their men's international side. My personal view is that's perhaps a little bit of a narrow vision. I think one of the things that I've worked with Sport Wales in the past, and what I'm keen to do is to build on being inclusive as a sport. And I think that we launched last year an international women's pathway. As I say, now the foundation to that is club size for women and for girls. And we're building with our wheelchair teams. So we're hopefully going to have 4 new wheelchair teams, community wheelchair teams in South Wales, and potentially 2 more in North Wales. And also Physical Disability Rugby League and Learning Disability Rugby League. So when I sit down in front of Sport Wales and Welsh Government and I tell them about all the things that we're doing, they lean backwards in their chair, because as a sport, Rugby League is the most accessible sport to the community. We provide sport for everybody, from juniors to masters. Masters is something else that we're doing. So from a funding point of view, I'm confident in difficult circumstances. It's going to be difficult for everybody in terms of trying to get sponsorship money and funding, because government obviously are trying to redirect that money into health services and that sort of thing. But I think that they accept, Sport Wales and Welsh Government accept that as a sport, we need more support financially, because we are providing more sport for the community. And so I'm confident going into next year that actually, whereas some of the sports will be having a decrease in funding, we'll be pushing very hard. And what's been shared with us is that we continue doing what we're doing and providing sport for all. We should get more money going into the future, which is brilliant. Yeah.
If I could go back to the men's team for a second, the national team, what games are you going to be playing before the World Cup? Will you get to play this year, or is that already a write-off? and next year we have warm-up matches. I mean, how many matches can you expect to have before the World Cup?
Well, I'm actually on a call tonight with all of my colleagues from the RLEF, all my colleagues in Europe. First question we've got to decide on is where we are with the Europe A competition. I think it's obvious with the challenges that COVID have brought in terms of travel, safety for staff, safety for players, quarantine, the requirements of testing and sanitizing are absolutely immense. And not to mention that, we have to ensure our players to travel to Europe, and we have to indemnify our staff because of coronavirus. And so there are huge costs associated with that. So first decision is, what are we going to do about the Euros? And, that decision is going to be taken in the next couple of days. Given the circumstances, it's unlikely to go ahead, in my opinion, but that decision is still to be taken by the RLEF. But once we have that decision, then we can look at what we're going to do. And if that is cancelled, then, it's much easier for us to have bilateral agreements with perhaps England and Scotland, because there's no international travel as such. We're on the UK mainland. So, looking at something like that. And we were due to play Jamaica at the end of this year. So, again, that's something that we're potentially looking at. And if that doesn't go ahead this year, we will definitely be playing, hopefully, Jamaica next year as part of a celebration of diversity. We're hopefully going to be playing for something like the Billy Boston Cup to celebrate all our black heritage players. And that would form part of what we're trying to do in terms of our preparation for the World Cup. Awesome.
Now, I have to ask you about this one. Another new club that seems to have popped up in the last couple of weeks is the Cardiff Trojans. And there seems to be some friction there. I guess most people would have just seen a couple of tweets, or they don't know anything about it at all. What's the background to that, Gareth, the Cardiff Trojans?
I don't know, to be honest with you. As you say, they popped up, and as you'd expect us to do and expect me to do as a CEO of a national governing body, we reached out to them to see how we could help them and to explain to them the process of how you start a rugby league club in Wales, with a special mention and a lot of focus on safeguarding and governance and all the other things that we have to do as a publicly funded body who work with Welsh Government and Sport Wales. And look, at the end of the day, they appeared to be anonymous. They still appear to be anonymous. So, at the end of the day, until they send us a proper application, there's nothing that we can do about it. So, that's where it's parked at the moment.
They did say that they wanted to enter League One in 5 years. So, could they just go about that like Ottawa or Toronto and just not go through you at all, just do their own thing and to deal directly with the RFL, or do they have to come to your doorstep eventually?
So all rugby that goes on in Wales has to be sanctioned by the governing body, Wales Rugby League. We now work far closer with the RFL than we have done for some time. Mark Levering, who's head of the community game at the RFL and sits on their executive board, also sits on our board as well, to make sure that our strategic plan dovetails with their strategic plan. It makes sense that we're working together. We have cross-border competitions. We have 2 semi-pro clubs, so we're working much closer together. So the simple answer to your question is the RFL are not going to do anything that's contrary to Wales Rugby League strategy.
Right.
Simple as that.
So how does that apply to the Euro 13s then? Do they eventually have to get RFL sanctioning in order to have a team in Birmingham, to have a team in Wales, to have a team in Edinburgh? Are they going to have to go down that track eventually?
Well, the RFL, are responsible for the competitions, and they're responsible for sport in England, and Wales Rugby League are responsible for sport in Wales. So I'm not quite sure what approach they've taken, to be honest with you. As I say, our club on the Outlaws are acting as free agents, and until we have more information, that's where it's at. We remain neutral.
Yeah. But you just said that all activity that happens in Wales has to be approved by Wales Rugby League. So at some point you're going to have to approve a match in the Euro 13s, aren't you? You're going to have to approve that it takes place.
No, Ronda Outlaws are playing all of their games away.
Oh, right.
So that's not a consideration.
Oh, I didn't know that. There you go. So they're just going to go on tour. Sounds like a lot of fun, actually.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
As I said, as I said, I can remember when I was, a younger man playing, rugby and rugby union and rugby league. That, they're going to. It's an opportunity for them. And they're just going to, as you say, they're going to go on tour, and it'll be interesting to see how it all pans out.
Great. Okay, Gareth, I'll let you go in a minute, but what can you say that your sort of ambitions are over the... I mean, this is a good question to finish with, I think. What sort of targets do you set for the World Cup? What's a successful World Cup for Wales?
Well, I'm the CEO, so, John Kear's head of our performance in terms of our national team. So we'll have some aspirations. I'll have some aspirations personally, because I have close connections to our men's team. The group that we're in, we're really excited about that. Playing Papua New Guinea and Port Moresby in 90 degrees is a tough ask, and we've done that, and I was there. Playing PNG in the UK on a cold night in October or November is a slightly different proposition. So, I think that we feel we're going to be very competitive. We've got a great balance in our squad. We play against Tonga. All three games are going to be difficult. There's absolutely no doubt about that. Papua New Guinea have some great players, and Cook Islands have some great players, and Tonga, well, arguably one of the best, if not the best side in the world at the moment. So it's a tough game, but it's going to be a great experience. And we know that everyone who puts a Welsh shirt on will be representing all 3 million people in Wales proudly. And whatever happens, we'll be proud of their exploits.
What a great way to finish. Thanks for your time, mate. I really appreciate it. There's a delay like I'm in Australia or you're in Antarctica or something. But anyway, we got through it. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me on.